Hey, brand builder, Rory Vaden here. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this interview. As always, it's our honor to provide it to you for free. And wanted to let you know there's no big sales pitch or anything coming at the end. However, if you are someone who is looking to build and monetize your personal brand, we would love to talk to you and get to know you a little bit and hear about some of your dreams and visions and share with you a little bit about what we're up to see if we might be a fit. So if you're interested in a free strategy call with someone from our team, we would love to hear from you. You can do that at brandbuildersgroup.com/podcall, brandbuildersgroup.com/podcall. We hope to talk to you soon.
If you've hung around here for any length of time, you know that the way that we define personal branding is simply the digitization of reputation. And one of the ways that I vet podcast guests that we're going to bring on to introduce you to is through their reputation. It's what do I hear about somebody from other people? And that is why you are about to meet Selena Soo. Selena is friends with lots of people that we know, Julie Solomon and Susie Moore, and just like I've heard her name for years. Celine DaCosta, who we've had on this show, who I really love and adore, and I think she's brilliant. She actually was the one who finally connected us directly to Selena. And Selena is an expert in publicity, visibility, and just helping people get seen and have more reach. So she, for I think 18 years, lived in New York. She had a publicity agency. She's helped people get featured in Oprah and Forbes and Inc. And she works with lots of experts and entrepreneurs, very similar, obviously, to our core audience, but specifically in the area of publicity. And so publicity is one of the things that we sort of lightly touch on, but we usually farm out that work to vendor partners. And so she's a total pro. And I was like, we got to get her on the show so that we can get a chance to meet her. So Selena, welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast.
Thank you, Rory. I'm so thrilled to be here.
So, so let's talk about publicity, and let's start with the easy ones. How do you get on Good Morning America?
You're hilarious. But yeah, no, that's a good question from the standpoint of like a lot of people are asking the wrong questions when they get started with publicity. They're saying, I want to get on Good Morning America. I want to get on Oprah's couch. And I think it's really important to start with getting clear on what is the right publicity strategy for me. So I think that we could begin with that. And so, the number one thing that you need to be clear on are what are your goals with publicity, and connected to that, what is your business model? If you are someone that is selling a $20 book, that's very different than someone who is selling a $10,000 coaching program. So there's, different kinds of media that make sense for your particular business model. But I'll just briefly explain a framework that I developed called the Publicity Pyramid, because
we love frameworks. We love frameworks.
Okay, great. So, imagine a pyramid, a triangle. At the bottom of the pyramid, that is your home base. That is your online presence, right? That's your personal brand. Because the first thing that people are going to do when they hear about you, whether it's Oprah's producers or someone else, is Google you. And if they Google you and nothing shows up, then they're not going to like the real deal. Exactly. Right. So even just having like a solid website, a social media presence with content, like that is step one, right? To really like be present online. And then step two is guest posting, because that's a natural extension from writing content on social media or your blog or your newsletter. So now you're sharing that same content, but on third-party websites so that other people can see you. And the great thing about guest posting is oftentimes you can include a link back to your website, right? So that's good for SEO. It can be good for list building, if you can link up to a lead magnet. And there are some amazing places like Forbes, Mind Body Green that are built on this model of guest posting. Thrive Global, right? All these different places. So that would be the second layer of the publicity pyramid. And then
before you go on to the third one, which I do want to hear this, but I will say, like, we've been on Fox, we've been on Good Morning America, we've been on Fox and Friends, we've been on, several local. I will say, I would rather have an online article with a link to my site than I would be on Good Morning America. Like the power of an article that people can read. I mean, being on Good Morning America and stuff helps a bunch with credibility, but it's mostly, it's kind of like you drive for show and you putt for dough in golf. Like most of the national TV is like the publicity perception, but when it comes to driving traffic and sales and leads, man, I love a link. I want a link.
Yeah, I'm so on the same page. And that's, how I started, like following this publicity pyramid framework where, I had my website and, my social media, but then I was writing articles and writing guest posts, including writing guest posts for influencers who, would mail the guest posts like to their email list. And that's how I got, my first, like maybe 2,000 subscribers through that strategy.
Wow.
Yeah. So guest posting.
Your first 2,000 email, like in your database, came from just putting articles on other people's sites.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was my, starting point for really like getting my name out there to the public. And then from there, the next level is podcast interviews and video interviews, or guest teaching would also fall into this category. When you're getting started out as an expert, you want to start with, sharing your ideas through written content. And eventually, then you're going to have these back and forth conversations with people. Now, this is really where I hang out on the publicity pyramid because, even though podcasts or doing guest teaching, it can be more niche, but these are people that are raising their hands saying, yes, I want to be in the room, or I want to be listening to this conversation and learning 30 minutes or an hour. Those are the same kinds of people that buy online courses and coaching programs. So that's really, where I primarily hang out. And maybe, a certain podcast might not have the brand name recognition as Forbes, but again, not all publicity is created equal. And it's not just about the branding. It's about, are my ideal clients who are right for my offers hanging out there?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a great example. Like you likely would get more clients from this podcast than probably from a national TV thing, because it's like, there's a random smattering of people listening. But, something you just said, I've never really thought about, which I love, is when someone listens to a podcast, it's like they've already opted in, because they already saw who the guest is. They read a little blurb. And so based on the host, and then like, okay, this guest looks interesting. It's almost like a first level opt-in that they're choosing to be there. I like that. I've never heard anyone say that before. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So is there a step 4?
There's 4. There's the next level. There's 4 and 5. Okay. So now as we're moving up the publicity pyramid, we're getting more mainstream. So now this would be magazines. And, magazines are powerful because people read magazines on the plane, at the beach, at the dentist's office. Like you're literally getting in front of millions of people. That being said, with magazines, typically when you're being mentioned in a magazine or featured, it's usually, your expertise, a quote versus like a fully written piece by you. So you're reaching millions, but it's, less in depth, right? And then with TV, which is at the top of the publicity pyramid, because it tends to be harder to get on TV than to get a podcast interview. That being said, as we move up, we're reaching more people, but it can be less in depth. Like, for example, a lot of TV interviews are just 3 or 4 minutes long.
Yeah.
So this can be really powerful.
Even if you're Tony Robbins, even if you're Tony Robbins, you get Dave Ramsey, you get 4 minutes and you're out.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a huge credibility builder to say you're on Good Morning America or CNN, and all of that. And it can be, powerful if you're spreading your message to the masses with like a mass product, whether it's a book, an iPhone app, or some kind of physical product. So it really depends on, is your message one really for the mainstream masses, or are you going for a more niche audience? And then also like considering, where do you really shine? For some people, they really want to stick to the written word, and that's really where their magic comes out. For other people, like video is where it's at. So, but I would say in terms of like the law of least effort, the most natural path, it would be building out some basic online presence, then going into guest posting, then podcasting. And then if you want to, moving your way up to magazines and TV.
Yeah, it's interesting, just this whole conversation that you just went through, which I love. The publicity pyramid is what you call it. So great. Such a simple framework is so powerful. Is, people go, oh, magazines and TV is so sexy, but like you're going to get way more business from podcasts and guest posting. Because it's just, there's that link click or that you direct drive. At least we have like that. That's been our experience. So Let's can we talk about TV for a second? Because that one is, I think people are super curious about it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always amazed because, like when it comes to podcasts, I tend to see, and you tell me if you think differently, but I tend to see that like when you see a guest on a podcast, you can almost predict it because it's like, oh, this person has a bunch of followers, they're super credible, or they're like, some world-renowned person in their field.
Yeah.
Or they're like famous for whatever. And in TV, a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, of course they're going to have Brad Pitt or whoever on there for something. But when it
Right.
comes to featuring books, I'm often surprised that if you're a mainstream person, it's not an automatic laydown. They might not have Gary Vaynerchuk on just because it's Gary Vaynerchuk. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they have newer authors on or people that you haven't heard of. In other words, it feels more random in terms of the selection. It's not like, oh, this person checks every single box and so they get invited on this huge show. It's a little bit of that, but a lot of times they'll grab people that are like newer. I mean, I got on Fox and Friends as a first-time author. Like the week after my first book came out was my first national TV appearance. And I was like, well, that's random. Like, what are they doing with me? So like, is there anything you can speak to into like, how do you get those spots? Is there anything they are looking for or not looking for, like for TV specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you want to differentiate between local news and national news, because for local TV, they have a responsibility to share the stories and ideas of local experts. So, if you're an author, think about, well, what cities am I connected to? Where was I born? Where did I go to college? Where have I worked? Where am I living now?
Oh, that's good.
Right. So I would identify all those places and really start with those markets, because if you can mention your local connection, then you're kind of at the top of the priority list. So that's important. And I would say that before you go on national TV, I mean, that's incredible that, you were on these national shows. But I also think a big part of it is that you've done an amazing job of building your personal brand, that they probably had confidence that, you were good on video. But I will say for national TV, they're going to want to see that someone has ideally been on local TV first. Because, just because someone's good at a podcast interview doesn't mean that they're going to be good at TV. They're going to consider like, do they have a great setup with lighting? Can they speak in sound bites? Because some people, yeah, they can talk on a 30-minute or 1-hour podcast interview, but can you speak succinctly in a 4-minute interview? So there's a lot more at stake. And it's not like with podcast interviews where they're going to be editing it later. Like you kind of got to get it right at the first shot. So I will say for like the big leagues, like the big national outlets, they're definitely doing the research in terms of what that person's personal brand is. Have they done TV before? Are they confident? Do they, smile? Are they presentable? So I would say the first stop is really, to start with local news. And then once you have those TV clips, then when you're sending in your pitch, you want to share that so they can see, you have that experience.
That's so good. And that is so true, Selena, that like, I love podcasts. I feel so super at home on podcasts. TV goes so fast. It 4 minutes blows by and it's like you don't have time for a setup. There's no time for backstory. It's like you just got to deliver sound bites. They got to be tight and sharp. It's a different skill set. And being on local TV is huge. I love that tip about too, what's your connection to local? And I would tell somebody listening, you think you want to be on Good Morning America right now, but you actually don't. You don't want to be on there until you're ready for it, which is until you've had some reps at local TV, you have the sound bites, and like your website is ready for it, and you're like prepared to like receive that traffic and capture. But yeah, TV is a different beast.
And the other thing that I will say is with TV, like they're really looking to capture people's interest, with visuals, right? Because you're watching TV. So, if you have
Good.
B-roll of you, I don't know, working with clients, or if you have like live exercise that the TV audience can do, like those are going to be things that are interesting. If you're just a talking head, like, and it's just, all they're seeing is someone talking for 4 minutes straight, it's not as interesting. So just know that when the producers are thinking about, well, I have this person on their show, they're going to think about not just what are the words that are going to come out of the person's mouth, but is there something that the person that can share that can capture visual interest, or is there activity that would be engaging to the audience?
Gosh, that's so simple, but that makes so much sense. So when you make a pitch, would you include notes about like B-roll that you would show, or like if there's a visual
Exactly.
or something?
Yeah. So if you were, say, a love coach and you were pitching, you could talk about, that you have clients that could come onto the show, or you have like B-roll of you working with clients, and so forth. Or maybe there's like an activity for someone to do to attract, their soulmate. And maybe you would write out like what that activity would look like. Like, maybe they need to have a journal that they journal in 30 days, and you would like mention all these different props so that the segment would look very dynamic, where there'd be the talking head, but there would also be props and activities involved.
Yeah, and that's why you see probably all the time you see like chefs on there, because it's very visual, because they can cut and show the food and like show all the stuff. So it's almost like when you're pitching for TV, what I hear you saying is it's like you're not even just pitching like the content of what you're going to say,
Yeah.
but almost like you're pitching, think of it as pitching a segment to them of like how this could fold out visually. And that makes it an easier yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, TV producers are so busy, and, think about like with a podcast, there'll be a certain number of episodes that are released, per month. But TV, I mean, it's kind of 24/7, right? It's every day. So they constantly need new content. They need to keep it interesting. So if you as an expert can pitch yourself, or as a publicist pitch you, and you're kind of like mapping out what this segment could look like, you're presenting something on a silver platter and making it easier for them to say yes. So when there's so many options, of course, we're going to say yes to the person who makes our job easy for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's really great. So, you mentioned earlier, which I think is really keen, about what are your goals? Like if you're trying to sell a book versus you're trying to generate coaching clients or clients for your practice, right? So we have a lot of like professional service people who tend to listen to this, financial advisors and like, people like that. Or if you're just trying to generate awareness for your company, you're the CEO and you're like, I'm not trying to do direct marketing with a conversion.
Yeah.
I just want impressions and awareness.
Yeah.
So how does that map, or how do those business objectives map to your publicity pyramid? Or like, are there certain ones that are better fits for others, or like, talk about
Yeah.
that?
That's such a great question. So I think it's important to get clear on with your expert topics. Are they niche or are they mainstream? So when I'm speaking of expert topics, it's like the things that you want to be known for. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs can be multi-passionate, but at the end of the day, you want to hone in on a few key things. So for example, at one point I had a business mastermind, and people in the mastermind would ask me questions about scaling their business, and if they should hire a senior project manager. Well, if I started getting bored of my regular expert topic and just went on a podcast talking about how to grow your team, well, then people are going to circle back and be like, oh, I want to work with you to grow my team. But like my mastermind is something that maybe is only for 20 people. Whereas with my programs, let's say I have 500 people, in a particular group program, right? So my primary group program has been a program called Impacting Millions, and that's about publicity. So if my intention was I want to get people enrolled to my publicity program, then what I'm talking about in the media should match my offerings, right? So looking at your own business, what's the 80/20? What does the majority of revenue come from? Which offering? Well, based on that offering, that should be what your expert topic is. And so when you look at your expert topic, is it mainstream or niche? So for publicity, I would consider that to be a niche topic. For me, a mainstream topic is something that applies to most people. For example, if I was to talk about being an introvert, well, half of the population are introverts, like approximately. So that would be mainstream. Or if I were talking about networking or relationship building, that applies to everyone, whether you're a student at college or you have, a professional job or you're an entrepreneur. Whereas publicity, typically, it applies to entrepreneurs who are building their personal brand. So that's a bit more niche. So knowing that with my offerings, I'm looking for a niche audience, not just kind of anybody, I'm going to target more niche media. So it might not have the same reach, but it's going to help me get in front of the right people. So those are the things I consider. But then there's also, there is a role for just personal brand building in terms of prestige media. There are certain brand names that are very recognizable, like Forbes and Business Insider. And so, being featured in those outlets can also be really powerful, whether or not your ideal client has actually read the article that you were featured in. But if they just see those media logos on, your site, they see you as a credible expert. And the other thing that you can do with your email list is when you get your media features, put them in front of them. You can add them to your email nurture sequence. You can add those, media logos and trust symbols next to, places where people opt in or, make purchasing decisions. So I think that when it comes to publicity, it's sort of multifaceted. I would say primarily you want to get in front of people who are your ideal clients, but there is also something to be said about prestige media as well.
Yeah, I love that, and I agree with that so much. I have found that most of the major national stuff, primarily the only real value of the media appearance is how you repurpose the appearance, basically putting it on your website. Also, those of you that are speakers, in your demo videos, or even if you're a coach and you're not a speaker, you could still have like a little bio video. And I'm pulling up a data point on this just for everybody. So one of the things that we did, Selena, was we led this Trends in Personal Branding National Research Study. And we partnered with this PhD-led research firm, and we asked, all these different questions. But one of the questions was, how important are each of the following when it comes to paying someone more for a product or service? So I just want to put a data point here behind something that Selena is saying. So, and we asked, you have a TED Talk, a New York Times bestselling book, a Wall Street Journal bestselling book, a social media file. I'll go ahead and show this on the screen for those of you that are watching this on YouTube. So I had to pull it up quick. So I'm on page 60 of our report, which is free. Y'all know that you can download this at on brandbuildersgroup.com. But the number one thing that clients say they're willing to pay more money for is when they see testimonials from their customers. The second is that they're paid to consult or speak. But the fourth, so this is a list of like 20 things. The fourth, and this is weighted to the U.S. Census, 52% of Americans say they are more likely to pay more money to buy a product or service from someone who has been featured in the media as an expert. So that is an actual data point that is supporting what Selena is saying. And of course, we've talked about this study in other times. And usually the point we make is actually the average person in the public doesn't care that much about a New York Times bestselling book or a Wall Street Journal or a viral TED Talk. They care about testimonials. And they care about, are you being paid to speak or consult? And then the fourth is that they care that you're appearing in the media. 52% of Americans say they'll pay you more money just because you have those logos on your site. So like, Selena, that is amazing.
Wow.
Like, what do you call it? Prestige? Is that what you called it? Prestige PR?
Prestige. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. So prestige PR. So that's really, really cool. And so the mainstream stuff too is like, so it's like money, sex, careers, relationships, like,
Productivity, success
productivity.
habits.
Yeah, those.
Mhm.
But even I found like even personal branding, a lot of it, we've gotten a lot of success from more like niche stuff and not main. It's not super mainstream for entrepreneurs. So, let's talk about entrepreneurs for a second. Okay, so clearly, if you have a course, you're trying to sell a membership site, a book, if you're trying to get yourself out there as a speaker, a consultant, okay, media makes sense. I get it. What if I'm an entrepreneur or even an executive at a company? How or when or why does the media really apply? And is there a way you would use media differently if you had that object? Like if I'm an expert and I go, I'm trying to sell more of my widget, great. I want to go on media and drive traffic and sell my widget. But if I'm an entrepreneur or I'm an executive of a company, would you modify that at all, or how does that work?
I think it's the same thing. Like having media, it builds your credibility as a go-to expert. As you said, people are willing to pay you more, but also people are more interested in inviting you to come in to be a speaker at their event. There's just more trust, or more likely to take the meeting, right? One of the first things that anyone does, before they respond to someone or say yes to a request is they do a quick Google search on them. And when they land on their website, if they see media logos, it's like, okay, this person is the real deal. And it just also shows that like you're taking your work seriously. If someone is just like quietly, doing their work, but they're not out there sharing their ideas, they're not building that body of work, they're not really seen as the real deal. So I would say that media is the ultimate credibility marker. It's something that every person understands. Whereas if you're like, oh, I had a webinar with 1,000 people on, people don't really know what that means, but they understand what it means to be featured in a top magazine, newspaper, podcast, and so forth.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely this like universal credibility indicator. I know we're wrapping up. One thing I want to do, how do you find these people? Okay, so let's say, I mean, of course you could hire a publicist, and then when you hire a publicist, you're sort of treading off of that they already have contact information and relationships with people, and that's really what you're paying for. When I feel like when you hire a publicist, you're paying for someone who has the contact information readily available and who has relationships to make that for you. None of them guarantee results. And they get varying results, partly based on their relationship, but largely based on your position in the marketplace. But if you're going to do it yourself, and we've actually had a lot of people be very successful doing it themselves.
I love it.
How do you find the outlets? Like, how do you find the people? I mean, do you basically just go to Google, or is like there anything specific you're typing in to like find the right person to pitch to?
Yeah, I think the first step is figuring out what are the right media outlets for me. So I can share like a couple of very quick strategies that I think will help people a lot. So one of my favorite techniques is called the follow the leader technique. It's something that I created. Yeah. So getting clear on, okay, what's my expert topic? So let's say someone's expert topic was, public speaking. Then they want to think about who are some other leaders either in their industry or connected to them, right? So they might be looking at, well, who else is teaching on visibility? Maybe it's a publicity expert. Maybe it's a public speaking coach. Maybe it's someone that specializes in getting people TED Talks, right? And then doing a Google search on them and seeing what kind of media they've been featured in. Maybe going to their website and seeing if they have a media page, or even going to a specialized search engine. So there's a search engine called listennotes.com. So listennotes.com. It's for podcasts. And so if you type in someone's name into that search engine, within moments, all the podcasts that they've been featured on are going to come up. So if you do that exercise with 5 people in your industry, in no time, you're going to have a media list of dozens of targeted outlets that top leaders in your industry have been featured in. And so these are places that you will want to be considering for your own media list. So, using the follow the leader technique is super, super powerful. Also, even doing things like leveraging existing research. If you want to be on top business podcasts, literally type into Google top business podcast, and people have compiled the top 20, the top 50, the top 100 business podcasts, and you can leverage that existing research to start building your own personal media list.
Yeah, that's funny. That's how I met Celine, actually. She was doing a
Oh,
Forbes
yeah.
podcast on the top personal brand. No, I think it was top podcast for business, and
Yeah.
somebody John Lee Dumas introduced her to us. So that was actually, she put an article together, which was an amazing article.
Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned Listen Notes, which is a great one because that is I was gonna mention that there's another really great tool, and I'm trying to remember what it is, that will tell you that's kind of similar. Listen Notes is the best for podcasts for sure. There's another one that you can like search by topic, and it will tell you all of the people who are SparkToro. Have you heard of SparkToro?
No, I feel like I need to write this down.
Yeah, it's a good one for those of you listening. Listen Notes is the one we use for podcasts, right? So you go
Okay.
figure out. And by the way, this is the same technique, those of you that are listening, that we use to get speaking engagements. We figure out who are the other speakers that are in your same fee range. You go to their website or go follow them on social media, and they post, had a great day speaking for so and so, or testimonials right on their website from Jane Smith at Oracle, and you're like, there it is, like it's this is the same strategy. But SparkToro is a really powerful tool, and it'll tell you like it's more of like an influencer research tool, but it's kind of in that. So anyways, like if you never checked it out, those of you listening, you can check out listennotes.com. SparkToro. We don't even have affiliate links for those. We should get affiliate links for them, but that's a freebie. Speaking of links, Selena, where should people go if they want to like connect with you and learn more? I know you have a bunch of free tools that you make available to people. So like, how do we stay connected to you?
Absolutely. So the thing I'm most excited to share is my 12-month publicity calendar, because when it comes to getting to the media, there's a few things that you need to understand. First of all, like what kinds of story ideas are they looking for? And one of the things that they're looking for are timely story ideas. So every single month there are certain themes, and if you can hit on these themes, you're more likely to get accepted onto podcasts, onto TV, in magazines, and so forth. So I have a 12-month media calendar. It's full of 40 pages worth of story ideas, special hooks, and dates to help you get into the media. And you
Love
can go
it.
to impactingmillions.com/calendar. And people have used this to not just map out their publicity plans for the year, but they've also used it to map out their social media content, their newsletter content. So people can go ahead and get it at impactingmillions.com/calendar. This took me like a ridiculous number of hours to put together, and it's 40 pages worth of time-saving tips and resources and dates to help you get into the media. So you can go ahead and check it out at impactingmillions.com/calendar.
Genius. We don't even have an affiliate link for this, but I went and did it myself. Great lead magnet, so useful and so practical, because yeah, it gives you a way, like all you need to know is what are the topics they're interested in every month, and then just like position what you do to that. Fantastic. So I'm downloading that. We'll put a link to impactingmillions.com in the show notes, //calendar, impactingmillions.com/calendar. You guys can check it out. Make sure you follow Selena online and send her some love. If you picked up some tips, let her know that you found her from our crew here. And gosh, Selena, this is just so cool. And I'm so glad to finally meet you in person. You are an example of your reputation precedes you, and that's what we want all of our clients to be. It's what we try to aspire to be. And you got great tips, a great lead magnet. Just, I love it. So we wish you the best. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much.